She thought she had it all. The man, the money, the first-class ticket to paradise. But when Amber sauntered onto the gleaming private jet, she found one obstacle: the quiet wife of her lover. What starts as a power play at 40,000 feet becomes the most devastating humiliation of her life. She was about to learn that the woman she dismissed as nothing didn't just have a seat on the plane. She owned the entire airline. This is the story of how a mistress's arrogance led to her ultimate downfall. The air at the Teterboro private lounge hummed with a different kind of silence. It wasn't the absence of sound, but the muffling of it by deep pile carpets, plush velvet upholstery, and the unspoken understanding that everyone present was wealthy enough not to speak above a polite murmur. Amber, however, had never been good with polite murmurs. She checked her reflection in the gold-leaf mirror, adjusting the strap of her crimson Prada dress. Her blonde hair, the product of a 6-hour salon visit, cascaded over her shoulders. She was, in a word, immaculate, a predator draped in luxury. Her phone buzzed. A text from Gregory. "Just landed. Walking over. You better be ready." A slow, satisfied smile spread across her face. Ready. She'd been ready for this her entire life. Gregory Fordham was her ticket, not just to this lounge or the waiting Gulfstream G700 outside, but to everything. He was a titan of finance, a shark in a Zegna suit, and he was, for all intents and purposes, hers. She picked up her Chanel bag and walked toward the discreet door leading to the tarmac. A lounge attendant, all smiles and deference, opened it for her. "Mr. Fordham's flight is this way, Miss Vaughan." Amber sniffed the air. It smelled of jet fuel and money. Oh, the plane was magnificent, a gleaming white spear with a dark blue stripe and the stylized zesta of the Zenith Charter Group on the tail. This was Gregory's preferred airline, the most exclusive charter service in the world, dwarfing competitors like NetJets or FlexJet in sheer luxury. As she approached the steps, she saw the flight attendant at the door, Brenda, a woman with a perfectly coiffed bun and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. But Brenda wasn't looking at her. She was looking past her, at someone else who had just emerged from the lounge. Amber turned, and her perfect day soured. It was her, Helen Fordham, the wife. Amber's lip curled in a micro-sneer she quickly hid. She had only seen photos of Helen, and they were universally unflattering. The reality was somehow worse. While Amber was a blaze of crimson and gold, Helen was a study in beige. She wore a simple, oatmeal-colored cashmere cardigan, grey slacks that were functional rather than fashionable, and sensible-looking loafers. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple, severe bun, and her face was scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked less like the wife of a billionaire and more like his moderately paid accountant. Helen was carrying her own small, rolling suitcase, struggling slightly with the wheel as it caught on the tarmac. He brought her? Amber's mind reeled. He's bringing his dowdy little wife on our trip. This was supposed to be their anniversary, the anniversary of the day they'd met, while Helen was presumably at some pathetic charity luncheon. Rage, hot and sharp, flared in Amber's chest. But then, a new, delicious thought replaced it. This wasn't a problem. This was an opportunity, a chance to establish, once and for all, who the real woman in Gregory's life was. Amber glided forward, her heels clicking decisively. She stopped directly in front of Helen, forcing the older woman to halt. "Helen, isn't it?" Amber said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. She didn't offer a hand. Helen looked up, her eyes, a surprisingly clear, steady blue, meeting Amber's. "Yes, and you are Amber." It wasn't a question. "I am," Amber beamed, making a show of looking her up and down. "Oh, goodness, Did Gregory forget to tell you where you were going? We're headed to Mustique. It's very warm. That cardigan might be a bit much." Helen's expression didn't flicker. "I'll manage." "I'm just so surprised to see you," Amber continued, loud enough for the flight attendant to hear. "I thought you were more, I don't know, the stay-at-home and knit type. But good for you, getting out. It's so important for people in your position to see the world." She was baiting her, insulting her, calling her a charity case. The wife was just baggage Gregory was forced to tow along, and Amber was the main event. "It's kind of you to be so concerned with my comfort," Helen replied, her voice incredibly, frustratingly calm. She made a move to step around Amber. Amber blocked her path again, stepping closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. "Let's get one thing clear, Beige. You might have the ring for now, but I have the man. You're a guest on my trip. Try to remember that. Sit in the back, read your little book, and don't get in the way. Maybe Gregory will throw you a souvenir." Amber felt a thrill of victory. She had drawn the battle lines. She watched Helen's face, waiting for the tears, the anger, the satisfying crack in her composure. Helen simply held her gaze for a long, silent moment. The sound of the jet's auxiliary power unit filled the void. "Are you quite finished?" Helen asked, as if inquiring about the weather. Before Amber could retort, a booming voice cut across the tarmac. "There you are." Gregory Fordham strode into view, all teeth and testosterone, his phone already pressed to his ear. "No, you tell Johnson if he can't close by Friday. The whole deal is dead. I don't care. Dead!" He clicked the phone off and shoved it into his pocket, his smile returning instantly as he looked at Amber. "You look like $1 billion, baby," he said, kissing her fully on the lips, a deliberately theatrical gesture for Helen's benefit. He then turned to his wife. The smile vanished. "Helen." It was a cold, flat acknowledgement. "You're here. Good. Get on the plane. Don't cause a scene." "Hello, Gregory," Helen said, her voice still impossibly neutral. "Come on, Amber," Gregory said, slinging an arm around her waist and guiding her toward the stairs, leaving Helen standing alone on the tarmac. Amber looked back over her shoulder and gave Helen a triumphant, pitying smirk. Helen, she noted, hadn't moved. She just watched them, her face unreadable. As Amber stepped into the cabin, the scent of fresh roses and rich leather hit her. "Brenda," she trilled at the flight attendant, "I'll have a glass of the good champagne before we even take off, and make sure my guest," she gestured back toward Helen, "has plenty of water. She looks a bit dehydrated." Brenda, the flight attendant, smiled that plastic smile. "Of course, Miss Vaughan." Amber settled into the plush cream leather seat, sinking into it with a sigh of pure bliss. This was her world, and Helen was just a ghost haunting it. The cabin of the Gulfstream G700 was less an aircraft interior and more a penthouse apartment that defied gravity. Polished walnut, cream leather, and brushed gold fixtures gleamed under the soft, adjustable lighting. Amber kicked off her Louboutins and stretched her legs, accepting the fluted glass of champagne from Brenda. Helen boarded moments later, quietly stowing her own small bag in the overhead compartment, a task Gregory didn't even bother to watch, as he was already on his satellite phone again, shouting at someone named Johnson. "Helen," Gregory barked, holding a hand over the receiver. "Sit, over there." He pointed to a single seat at the very back of the main cabin, near the galley and the lavatories. It was clearly the least desirable seat. Amber watched, sipping her champagne. This was perfect. The wife, banished to the back. Helen, without a word of protest, walked to the back, sat down, and buckled her seatbelt. A moment later, she pulled a worn, dog-eared paperback from her handbag. "Pathetic," Amber muttered to Gregory, who had hung up his call. "What's that, baby?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Her. Sitting back there like a servant. Why did you even have to bring her? You said this was our trip." Amber pouted, running a manicured nail down his lapel. Gregory sighed, his eyes hard. "Shareholder business, Amber. Annoying but necessary. There's a spousal retreat on Mustique I'm supposed to attend with her for one of my bigger investors. She's just paperwork, a prop. The real trip," he said, kissing her neck, "is with you. You're the one in the master suite. She's in the guest cottage, if she's lucky." This mollified Amber. A prop. She liked that. She was the star. Helen was the background extra. The engine spooled up, and the G700 accelerated down the runway with a powerful, smooth surge. Within minutes they were airborne, climbing above the grey haze of New Jersey. Once they reached cruising altitude, the performance began. Amber was determined to make the next 5 hours as uncomfortable for Helen as possible, and as validating for herself as she could. She laughed loudly at Gregory's jokes. She fed him a chocolate-covered strawberry from the exquisite platter Brenda served. She draped her legs over his lap, whispering in his ear and kissing him deeply, all while knowing Helen was just a few rows back. She decided to take a series of selfies. She angled her phone, capturing the luxurious cabin, the champagne, and Gregory's adoring gaze. In one shot, she deliberately angled it to catch the background. There, just visible in the frame, was Helen, a blur of beige, engrossed in her book. Amber typed out a caption for her private Instagram story, reserved for her closest frenemies. "Finally heading to paradise with my man. Had to bring the excess baggage, LOL. Some people just don't know when their time is up." Winning. First class life. She hit send, feeling a rush of adrenaline. About an hour into the flight, Gregory fell asleep, his head tilted back, snoring softly. The cabin grew quiet, save for the hum of the engines. Amber was bored. She unbuckled and decided to stretch her legs and pay the prop a little visit. She sauntered to the back of the plane, pretending to be heading for the lavatory. Helen didn't look up from her book. "Enjoying the flight?" Amber asked, leaning against the bulkhead. Helen finished her page, then slowly looked up. "It's very smooth." "Zenith is the best," Amber said brightly. "Gregory, of course, only flies the best. He's one of their biggest clients. They treat him like royalty. We," she corrected herself, "get anything we want." Helen's gaze was unsettling. It wasn't fearful or angry. It was analytical, as if Amber were a bug under a microscope. "That must be very convenient for you," Helen finally said. "Oh, it is," Amber purred. "It's amazing what men will do for women they're actually passionate about. All this," she gestured around the cabin. "This is what real love looks like. Not whatever it is you have. A piece of paper? A shared Christmas card list? It's so quaint." Amber was trying to get a rise out of her, a single tear, a tremor in her voice. Anything. Helen just bookmarked her page. "Are you insecure, Amber?" Amber physically recoiled. "What? I have everything. Look at me. Look at you. Who on this plane looks insecure?" "People who are secure don't need to announce that they're winning," Helen said, her voice still quiet, but with a new, sharp edge that hadn't been there on the tarmac. "They just win. You seem to be working very hard to convince yourself of something." Amber's face flushed with anger. "You pathetic, dried up. You think you're wise? You're a joke. You're a doormat. Gregory is wiping his feet on you, and you're just sitting there, reading a book. And you are, what exactly? The new expensive welcome mat? Be careful, dear. Mats get replaced when they get dirty." "I am the future," Amber hissed, losing her composure, her voice rising above the engine hum. I'm the one he's building a life with. You're just the past he's too lazy to file for divorce from." The sleeping Gregory stirred at the front of the cabin. "Amber, what's going on back there?" Amber shot a look of pure hatred at Helen, then composed herself, strutting back to her seat. "Nothing, darling. Just getting a drink. The guest was just sleeping." She sat down, fuming. The little beige mouse had claws. The audacity of her! Amber stewed in her seat, her victory on the tarmac now feeling hollow. She needed to regain control. She needed to prove, to Helen and to Gregory, who was really in charge, and she knew just how to do it. For the next 2 hours, Amber sulked. She drank 2 more glasses of champagne, the bubbles doing little to soothe the simmering indignation. The nerve of that woman! "Mats get replaced." Amber watched the crew. There were 2 attendants in the main cabin, Brenda and a younger man named Leo. They were ghosts in sharp uniforms, efficient, polite, and invisible. They refilled Amber's glass without being asked. They brought Gregory a warm towel the moment he woke up. They were, in short, perfect service staff. But Amber started to notice something. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in their behavior. When Amber had snapped her fingers for a refill, a habit she'd picked up, believing it made her look commanding. Brenda's smile had tightened for a fraction of a second before she'd complied. "Right away, Ms. Vaughan." When Gregory had tossed his used napkin onto the floor, Leo had picked it up with a smile, but his eyes were flat. Their deference was professional, but it felt brittle, strained. Then Amber watched as Brenda approached Helen's seat in the back. Amber had to crane her neck to see. Brenda leaned down, not with the efficient, curt posture she used for Amber, but with a genuine, gentle incline. "Ms. H," Brenda said, her voice too low for Amber to hear the words, but the tone was entirely different. It was soft, respectful. Amber saw Helen smile, a small, genuine smile, and nod, gesturing to her empty water glass. Brenda returned a moment later, not with a standard plastic bottle, but with a tall glass of what looked like sparkling water with a twist of lime, served on a small, linen-wrapped tray. Amber's eyes narrowed. "Miss H? What kind of nickname was that?" It sounded familiar. Familiar and deferential. Not the kind of pitying nickname you give the sad wife. It sounded like respect. Amber dismissed it. They probably just feel sorry for her. The poor, cheated-on wife. They're giving her the pity treatment. The thought made her feel superior again. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Gregory was back on his phone, his voice tense. "I don't care what the margin call is. Move the funds from the Singapore account. Just handle it, damn it." He looked stressed, dark circles under his eyes that his tan couldn't hide. "Trouble in paradise, darling?" Amber asked, running her foot up his leg. "Nothing you need to worry about, baby," he said, patting her knee distractedly. "Just market fluctuations." He didn't seem like the confident shark she'd met. He seemed desperate. Amber turned her attention back to the cabin crew. She decided to test a theory. She pressed the call button. Leo appeared instantly. "Yes, Miss Vaughan?" "I'm cold," Amber announced. "The air is too high. Turn it up." "Certainly, Miss Vaughan. I'll adjust the cabin temperature immediately." He disappeared toward the cockpit. A few minutes later, Amber didn't feel any warmer. If anything, the air felt a tiny bit cooler. She fumed. She was being ignored. She pressed the button again, harder this time. Brenda appeared. "Is there a problem, Miss Vaughan?" "I told him," Amber snapped, "that I am cold. It's freezing in here. I want a blanket, a thick one, and I want the heat turned up. Now." Brenda's professional smile remained plastered on. "Miss Vaughan, The cabin temperature is set for optimal comfort. I'd be happy to bring you a pashmina. I don't want a pashmina. I want the heat turned up. I'm afraid any significant change to the cabin temperature requires me to check with all our guests first, as it can affect cabin pressure and comfort, Brenda said smoothly. Then check. Amber gestured to Gregory, who was rubbing his temples, and then back to Helen. It's just us. Go ask her. Brenda nodded. Thank you, Miss Vaughan. I will do just that. Brenda didn't walk to Gregory. She didn't walk to the thermostat. She walked directly to the back of the plane, to Helen's seat. Again, she leaned in. Amber watched intently. This was not the behavior of an attendant asking a prop for permission. This was the behavior of an attendant asking a host. Brenda spoke to Helen for a long moment. Helen listened, then shook her head, saying something brief in reply. Brenda returned to Amber's seat. Her smile was still in place, but it looked like it had been carved from ice. My apologies, Miss Vaughan, Brenda said, her voice crisp. We are unable to adjust the cabin temperature at this time. However, she produced a thick cashmere throw, the color of clotted cream. I have this for you. It's brand new. Amber snatched the blanket. This is ridiculous. Gregory, are you hearing this? They're refusing to turn up the heat. Gregory, deep in a financial report on his laptop, just waved a hand. Just take the blanket, Amber. Stop making a fuss. Amber shrank back, humiliated. Stop making a fuss? He was taking their side over hers? Over the heat? She wrapped the blanket around herself, her face burning with a mixture of anger and a new, unfamiliar feeling. Confusion. Something was wrong. The dynamic was off. The staff was being polite, but they were defying her. And they were, in some strange, unspoken way, reporting to the beige mouse in the back. Amber looked back again. Helen had put her book down. She was staring out the window at the endless blue of the Atlantic. Her profile was calm, strong, and completely untroubled. For the first time, Amber felt a genuine prickle of fear. She'd assumed she was the queen in this equation. But what if she had fundamentally misunderstood the entire game? The incident with the thermostat left a bitter taste in Amber's mouth. She felt a desperate need to reassert her dominance, to prove that her initial assessment was correct. She was the A-plot. Helen was the B-plot. She needed a grand gesture, a display of power that the crew, and Helen, could not mistake. She remembered Gregory boasting about the Zenith Charter Group's wine cellar. He'd claimed they could source anything for their top clients, even mid-flight. "Brenda!" Amber called, her voice sharp. Brenda, who was clearing Gregory's empty coffee cup, turned. "Yes, Miss Vaughan. I've decided I want to celebrate. We're almost to Mustik. Gregory, darling," she cooed. "We should have a proper toast." Gregory, who had just closed his laptop with a stressed sigh, looked grateful for the distraction. "Good idea, baby. Whatever you want." Amber turned back to Brenda, a sly, victorious smile on her face. "I want the 1998 Dom Perignon Rosé Gold. I know you have it. Gregory has had it on this plane before." This was her checkmate. The 98 Rosé Gold was a legendary, ultra-rare vintage, costing tens of thousands of dollars a bottle. Ordering it was not a request. It was a declaration of status. It was the kind of thing only a king like Gregory could command. Brenda's professional smile didn't just tighten. It vanished. For a split second, she looked startled. Then, the mask was back. "The 1998 Dom Perignon Rosé Gold," Brenda repeated slowly, as if committing it to memory. "An excellent choice, Miss Vaughan. Please, wait one moment." She disappeared into the galley. Amber sat back, her smirk returning. There. Let the mouse in the back hear that. She was already picturing the magnificent, gold-plated bottle, the pop of the cork, the look of envy on Helen's face. Gregory seemed to relax. Now that's what I'm talking about. Good call, Amber. A minute passed. Then 2. Amber's smirk began to fade. What was taking so long? Was she arguing with the pilot about it? Brenda re-emerged from the galley. She was empty-handed. Miss Vaughan, Brenda began, her voice a low, formal monotone. I'm afraid the 1998 Dom Perignon Rosé Gold is not available for service. Amber's blood ran cold, then hot. Not available? What do you mean, not available? I just told you. Gregory has it all the time. My apologies, but that specific bottle is part of a private manifest. It is allocated. Allocated? Allocated to who? Amber demanded, her voice rising to a shriek. We are the only passengers. Are you telling me the pilots are drinking it? Gregory, seeing his prize and his status slipping away, sat up straight. His titan of industry voice returned. Now listen here, Brenda. I am paying over $100,000 for this flight. If my guest wants that champagne, she gets that champagne. I don't care what manifest it's on. Go and get it. That's an order. He said it with a finality that usually made assistants and subordinates scurry. Brenda didn't scurry. She stood her ground, her hands clasped in front of her. Sir, she said, addressing Gregory directly, her voice respectful but iron firm. I cannot. That bottle was provisioned by special request by the owner. It is not part of the standard client cellar. It is from the owner's personal stock, and it is reserved. Amber burst into a high, hysterical laugh. The owner? You think the owner is on this flight? What is he hiding in the cockpit? Gregory looked furious. This is an outrage. I am Gregory Fordham. I spend millions with this company. I am your owner, for all intents and purposes. Who the hell is on this plane more important than me? Brenda's gaze was steady. She didn't flinch. I am very sorry, Mr. Fordham, but my instructions are clear. The owner's private stock is not available. This is the worst service I have ever had, Amber yelled, slamming her hand on the armrest. I'm going to have you fired. I'm going to tell Gregory to buy this entire pathetic airline and fire every single one of you. Amber, shut up, Gregory snapped, his face pale. He knew he'd been rebuffed, and it made him look weak. He turned back to Brenda. This is unacceptable. Get your manager. I am the lead flight coordinator, sir. There is no one else to speak to, Brenda said. I can offer you our Dom Perignon 2012, which is also excellent. I don't want the 2012, Amber cried, her face blotchy with rage. I want the 98. I want what I asked for. And you can't have it. The voice was not Brenda's. It was quiet. It was clear. And it came from the back of the plane. Amber, Gregory, and Brenda all turned. Helen Fordham had put her book down in her lap. She was looking at them, her expression no longer passive or analytical. It was one of mild annoyance, as if they were toddlers throwing a tantrum. What did you say? Amber whispered, her throat suddenly dry. Helen unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up. And for the first time, Amber noticed she wasn't dowdy. The cashmere, she now saw, was Loro Piana. The simple loafers were handcrafted by Brunello Cucinelli. The beige outfit probably cost more than Amber's entire crimson ensemble. Helen walked slowly up the aisle, her movements fluid and sure-footed, despite the slight hum of the aircraft. She stopped next to Brenda, standing shoulder to shoulder with the flight attendant. She looked at Amber, then at her husband. I said, Helen repeated, her voice perfectly modulated, you can't have it. Because, as Brenda correctly stated, it's mine. The silence in the cabin was absolute, broken only by the faint whistle of air passing over the wings. Gregory stared, his mouth slightly open. "Helen, what? What are you talking about? It's yours? Did you steal it from the galley?" Amber let out a choked sound, a cross between a laugh and a gasp. "Oh my God! Are you a klepto? You're stealing champagne now. This is a new low, even for you." Helen simply raised an eyebrow. She didn't look at Amber. She didn't even look at Gregory. She looked at Brenda. "Brenda," Helen said, her voice warm, "you've handled this beautifully. But I believe you can stop referring to me as Ms. H now. It was a lovely code. But I think the game is up." Brenda's icy, professional mask melted away, replaced by a look of profound, genuine respect. "Yes, Mrs. Fordham. My apologies. I was just trying to maintain protocol as you requested." "You did perfectly," Helen said. She then turned her steady, blue-eyed gaze back to her husband. "Gregory," she said, and the name sounded new on her tongue. It wasn't the whisper of a wife. It was the sharp, clear pronouncement of a CEO. "You've been flying with Zenith Charter Group for 3 years. You've spent, as you correctly noted, millions of dollars. And in all that time, you never once bothered to ask what the Z stood for? Or the H in our parent company, H Group Global?" Gregory's face was ashen. "What? What are you talking about?" "H Group. That's holdings. H Group Holdings." "No, Gregory," Helen said softly. "It's not. H Group was founded by my mother, Helena. And Zenith? That was my pet project. My father always loved the stars. The zenith is the highest point. I founded this airline 10 years ago, before I even met you, as a small tribute to him." She ran a hand along the polished walnut bulkhead. "I designed this very interior. I chose the leather. I selected the routes. And I personally curate the owner's private wine list." She looked at Amber, whose own face had gone from crimson rage to a waxy chalk white. "The 1998 Dom Perignon Rosé Gold," Helen said, "was a gift from my father the day we secured our first G5. There is exactly 1 bottle on this plane, and I assure you, you are not drinking it." Amber sank back into her seat, her entire body numb. No, that's not possible. You're nothing. You're a housewife. You go to garden clubs." "Yes," Helen agreed. "I do. I am the head of the New York Botanical Gardens Endowment Fund. I'm also on the board of the Met, and I am the sole 100% owner of Zenith Charter Group and its parent company, H Group Global, which, among other things, owns the building your office is in, Gregory." Gregory finally found his voice. It was a strangled whisper. Helen, why? Why didn't I know? You always said you were just in philanthropy." "You never asked," Helen said, a deep, profound sadness entering her voice for the first time. "You met me at a charity ball. You saw my quiet clothes. You saw my family's old name, and you assumed I was just old money. You assumed I was a relic, a simple, quiet prop you could use to look respectable, while you behaved like this." She gestured from Amber to Gregory. Gregory was sputtering, his mind visibly racing, trying to recalculate decades of assumptions. "Helen, baby, listen to me. This, he gestured wildly at Amber. "This is nothing. This is a mistake, a diversion. You're my wife. I love you." Amber felt like she'd been slapped. "What? Gregory, you told me I was your life. You told me she was the mistake." Gregory ignored her, his eyes fixed on Helen, his face a mask of sweating, desperate panic. "Helen, please. We can sort this out. When we land, we'll send her," he spat the word, "back. We'll go to the resort. Just us. We'll talk." Helen watched him grovel. The shark had become a minnow, flopping on the deck. "No, Gregory, I don't think we will," Helen said. "You see, I've known about Amber for 6 months. I've known about the Singapore accounts for a year. I've known about the margin calls and the fact that you've been desperately and illegally trying to leverage my personal assets you still don't have access to cover your own catastrophic business failures." She walked over to the galley. Brenda, anticipating, had the 98 rosé gold waiting. It was, as Amber had noted, in a stunning gold-plated bottle. Helen took a clean flute from Brenda. "Thank you, Brenda. I think I will have that glass now." Brenda smiled. "My pleasure, Madame Chairman." Helen turned back to the frozen duo. The pop of the cork was the loudest sound Amber had ever heard. Helen poured a glass of the pale, bubbling pink champagne. "You see, Gregory," Helen said, taking a delicate sip, "this trip was shareholder business. I am the main shareholder of your company, or I was. As of 9 a.m. this morning, my board invoked the morality clause in your contract and voted for your removal. The spousal retreat on Mustique was a fiction, a way to get you and your excess baggage on my plane in international airspace where you couldn't cause a scene." She looked at Amber. "You're right about one thing. You are on this trip as a witness." Gregory Fordham's face went through a rapid, grotesque series of transformations, from ashen panic to purple rage, and finally, to a sickly, defeated green. You can't," he stammered, his bravado utterly shattered. My company? I built that from nothing." "You built it," Helen corrected, "with a $50 million seed loan from H Group Global, a loan which, I might add, is now in default. You haven't built anything in a decade, Gregory. You've just been spending on parties, on apartments you don't own, on her." Amber, who had been frozen in a state of shock, suddenly found her voice. It was high and thin. "Me? What about me? Gregory, tell her you love me. Tell her she's lying." Gregory didn't even look at her. His entire universe had collapsed, and his eyes were fixed on the only person who mattered, his wife. "Helen, please," he begged, actually getting up from his seat and moving to kneel in the aisle beside her. "Helen, I'm so sorry. I was a fool, a blind, arrogant fool. You are everything. She's a cheap, gold-digging. She means nothing. I'll end it. Right now. I'll tell her to get off the plane. We can fix this. I can fix this." Amber felt the last of the air leave her lungs. She was the one being thrown away. She was the excess baggage. "Get off me, Gregory," Helen said, stepping back from his grasping hands with revulsion. "It's too late for that. It's been too late for a very long time. Did you really think I was that quiet? That simple? That dowdy?" She was using Amber's insults. "I let you think that," Helen continued, her voice like ice. "I let you think I was happily knitting and gardening while you played the big, important man. It was a test of your character. And you have failed, Gregory. You haven't just failed. You have failed so spectacularly that you will be a case study in business schools for decades." She took another sip of her champagne. "While you were buying Prada," she glanced at Amber's dress, "and leveraging company assets for your little side piece, I was quietly moving. Every asset you thought you had access to was systematically insulated. The accounts you've been draining, they were decoys I set up 6 months ago filled with just enough money to keep you busy and to provide a very clear, very damning paper trail of embezzlement for the SEC. The real money, my father's money, my mother's money, has been in a blind trust since the day we married. A trust, I might add, that you have no legal claim to, especially not after, well, all of this. Gregory had crawled back to his seat. He was breathing heavily. You trapped me." "No," Helen said. "You built the cage, Gregory. I just let you lock yourself inside it." Suddenly, Amber, in a fit of pure, unadulterated panic, realized her own position. Her billionaire boyfriend wasn't just not a billionaire. He was broke. He was a criminal. And she had just spent 5 hours insulting the actual billionaire. "Wait! Wait!" Amber shrieked, scrambling up. This isn't my fault. He told me you were nothing. He lied to me. I'm a victim here too." She looked at Helen, her eyes wide with desperation. "Please, I didn't know. I would never. I mean, you're amazing. What you did, it's genius. We should be friends." Helen looked at Amber, and for the first time, Amber saw what she had mistaken for quiet and beige. It wasn't weakness. It was a stillness, a deep, cold, and absolute power. "Friends?" Helen replied, a small, mirthless smile playing on her lips. "I don't think so. You're not a victim, Amber. You're a co-conspirator. You knew he was a married man. You gleefully participated in his humiliation of me. You drank his champagne, you wore his clothes, and you sat in my plane, insulting me. You didn't care about the right or wrong of it. You only cared that you were winning. And now you've lost." The intercom crackled. It wasn't the pilot's voice. It was Brenda's. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our initial descent. However, there has been a change in our flight plan. We will not be landing in Mustique. We will be landing at Westchester County Airport in White Plains, New York. We will be on the ground in approximately 20 minutes. Amber's head snapped to the window. The endless blue ocean was gone. Below them, shrouded in the late afternoon haze, was the distinct shoreline of the Long Island Sound. They weren't in the Caribbean. They had just flown in a large, pointless circle. "What? New York?" Amber shrieked. "We're back in New York. We didn't go anywhere." "Oh, we went somewhere," Helen said, returning to her seat, her original seat in the back. "We flew out over international waters, far enough for my legal team to file the injunctions, freeze your accounts, and remove you from the company board without you being able to interfere. And now, we're home." Gregory was rocking back and forth, muttering to himself. "My office, the building, oh God, the funds, Johnson. I have to call Johnson." He fumbled for his satellite phone. "I wouldn't bother," Helen called from the back. "Mr. Johnson has been cooperating with my forensic accounting team for 3 weeks. He's the one who gave us the final piece of evidence. He's probably signing a witness protection agreement as we speak." Gregory's hand froze. He looked at the phone in his hand as if it were a snake. His entire world, his empire, his mistress, his wife, all of it, had been an illusion, orchestrated by the one person he had never, ever taken seriously. The descent was heavy with a silence, thicker than the clouds they were passing through. The luxurious cabin, which had so recently been Amber's stage for triumph, had become a soundproofed tomb. Every faint creak of the fuselage, every subtle shift in the engine's whine, felt magnified, echoing in the dead air between the 3 passengers. Amber sat rigid, her hands clamped so tightly on the cream leather armrests that her knuckles were white. Her gaze was fixed on the bulkhead in front of her, but she saw nothing. Her mind was a frantic blur of calculations, a desperate search for an angle, an escape, a way to rewind time. But there was none. She was trapped at 40,000 feet with the woman she had mocked and the man who had just proven to be a hollow shell. Gregory was in a worse state. He was completely catatonic. His face, which had cycled through panic and rage, had settled into a mask of waxy, sweaty ruin. He stared at his own reflection in the polished walnut table, his breathing shallow. He was a man who had been playing chess, only to find out his opponent was playing a different game entirely, one she had already won before he even sat down. And in the back, Helen had resumed reading her paperback book. The sight of it was the most terrifying thing Amber had ever witnessed. She was calmly turning pages, as if she were on a commuter train, not concluding a hostile takeover of her husband's life in mid-air. The Gulfstream G700 touched down on the runway at Westchester County Airport with a barely perceptible bump. The landing was, as always, impossibly smooth, but the thud of the wheels on the tarmac felt like a gavel striking, a final judgment. They weren't in Mustique. They weren't in paradise. They were back in New York on a grey, overcast afternoon. The plane didn't taxi to the sleek, glass-walled private terminal where Amber had boarded, a place humming with quiet prestige and waiting limousines. Instead, it rolled, and kept rolling, to a remote, isolated part of the airfield. Amber finally forced her head to turn to the window. She saw no plush lounges, only a chain-link fence, a small, featureless utility building, and a vast, empty stretch of grey concrete. The engine spooled down. The sudden, encompassing silence was louder than any of Gregory's rants had been. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off. "Thank you for flying Zenith Charter Group." Brenda's voice came over the intercom, her tone once again bright and professional, as if this were the most normal flight in the world. "The local time is 4:52 p.m. Please remain seated until the cabin door is open." In the back, Helen placed her bookmark, a simple leather strip, into her book and closed it. She stood, smoothing her Loro Piana cardigan, her movements fluid and unhurried. She picked up her small, simple handbag. Amber finally realized the truth. Helen hadn't been struggling with a rolling suitcase on the tarmac. She'd been pretending to. The bag had been a prop, a piece of her dowdy wife costume, likely left in the lounge. The cabin door opened. The cold, damp air of a New York autumn afternoon rushed in, displacing the climate-controlled luxury. It didn't reveal a red carpet. It revealed a set of stark, metal stairs, the grey tarmac, and two men in dark, conservative suits. They looked like lawyers, or perhaps something more. They were not smiling. Standing a few feet behind them, his presence an unstated threat, was a uniformed officer from the Westchester County Police. Helen walked to the front of the plane. She passed Gregory's seat. He didn't look up, not even when her shadow fell across him. She paused at Amber's row. Amber looked up, her face a ruin. Her perfectly applied makeup was now a blotchy, tear-streaked mess. Her crimson dress felt garish and cheap. What's going to happen to me?" Amber whispered, the words catching in her dry throat. It was the plea of a child, a final, desperate appeal to the very woman she had tried to destroy. Helen looked down at her. Her expression was not one of anger or even triumph. It was one of cool, detached pity, the look one might give a particularly foolish insect. "That, Amber, is no longer my concern," Helen said, her voice quiet, but carrying utter finality. "You saw this as a game of winning, and you attached yourself to the man you thought was the winner. You hitched your wagon to a falling star. My advice, for what it's worth? Next time, you should have brought your own parachute." She then turned to Gregory. "Gregory." He flinched, a small, pathetic motion. He finally looked at her, his eyes hollow and pleading. My lawyers will be serving you at... Well, I suppose they'll serve you at the police station. They will be handling the divorce and the criminal complaint for embezzlement and wire fraud. I have been advised, for legal reasons, not to speak to you again. Goodbye." Helen turned and walked to the open door, a picture of calm control. She nodded to the men in suits who parted for her like the sea. "Ms. H," one of them said, his voice low and respectful. "The car is ready." "Thank you, Robert," she replied. She walked down the steps, her sensible loafers making a soft, firm sound on the metal. She never once looked back. A black, unassuming Mercedes S-Class, a car that, unlike Amber's rented Ferraris, whispered power rather than screaming for attention, pulled up. Robert opened the door for her. She got in, and the car drove away, disappearing around the side of a hangar. Back on the plane, the two men in suits boarded, their large frames filling the doorway, blocking the light. The uniformed officer remained at the bottom of the steps. "Mr. Gregory Fordham?" the taller one asked. It was not a question. Gregory just nodded, a broken man, his head sinking to his chest. "You need to come with us. We have a warrant for your arrest on several counts of wire fraud and embezzlement. Please stand." Gregory stood, but he seemed to be moving through water. He was stumbling, his legs weak. The officer stepped up into the cabin, holding a pair of handcuffs. Amber watched, frozen, as the officer instructed Gregory to turn around. The man she had called her Titan, her king, the shark she had so admired, put his hands behind his back without a word. The sharp, metallic, click, click, click of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the only sound. They led him down the aisle, his expensive Xenia suit now hopelessly rumpled, his head bowed in utter defeat. And then he was gone. Amber was alone in the cabin with Brenda. The silence stretched. Brenda began to walk through the cabin, collecting the empty champagne flutes, her expression perfectly neutral. "Well," Amber said, her voice shaking as she tried to muster a final shred of dignity. I guess I'll just call an Uber." She reached for her phone, a desperate lunge for her last connection to the world. Brenda stopped her tidying and looked at her. Her professional smile was gone, and her eyes were as cold and grey as the tarmac outside. "I'm afraid not, Miss Vaughan," Brenda said, her voice stripped of all pretense of service. "Your name was on the flight manifest as a guest of Mr. Fordham. As he has just been arrested, and his account with Zenith Charter Group is permanently closed, effective immediately. You are now considered an unauthorized passenger." An unauthorized passenger," Amber repeated, the words feeling like a slap. "But I have to get home. You can't just leave me here." "I'm sure you do," Brenda said, "but you will not be leaving through the private terminal. That access is reserved for our clients. You'll be escorted by airport security through the main TSA checkpoint. From there, you're on your own." Brenda gestured to the open door, where a different, disgruntled-looking airport security guard was now waiting. Expulsion. This was the final humiliation. She wasn't just being kicked out of the plane, she was being kicked out of the world she had tried so hard to infiltrate. Amber looked around the cabin one last time, at the polished walnut, the plush seats, the empty flutes. This had been her dream, her golden cage, and the door had just been slammed shut, with her on the wrong side. Numbly, she picked up her Chanel bag, her only remaining prize. It suddenly felt heavy, a gaudy-looking prop from a play that had just ended. She walked, her head down, out of the aircraft, the cold air hitting her face. The security guard wordlessly pointed her toward a distant, staff-only door on the side of the main terminal. It was a long, humiliating walk across the open tarmac. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked at it, desperate for any lifeline, any friend. It was an alert from her Instagram. The story she had posted hours ago, the one of her and Gregory, the one calling Helen excess baggage, was suddenly, inexplicably, being flooded with comments. She didn't know how, but the story was out. OMG, do you know who his wife is? This aged so badly. LMAO, she owns the plane. Karma by Amber, a Zenith charter. Boss move. Her world had ended, not with a bang, but with the quiet, satisfied click of a car door as the quiet wife drove away. And just like that, the quiet wife showed that true power doesn't need to be loud. Helen walked away with her dignity, her company, and her freedom, while Amber and Gregory were left with nothing but the consequences of their own actions. What do you think of Helen's ultimate power move? Have you ever seen karma delivered so perfectly? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and unexpected twists, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama every single week. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next story.